Hey friend, I am so grateful that you pressed play today. Before I dive into the main topic, I'm going to share a little bit of behind the scenes and start with a bit of honesty. Back in February of 2024, I started a series related to Wholehearted Journey or Wholehearted Identity here on the podcast. I released the first one in March, and then, I had to take it down, and a few of you reached out to ask what happened. I wanted to share that episode. Here is a little bit more about what did happen. Around that time, as I was dealing with a bunch of different things, and I won't list them all here, but specifically around February or March of 2024, I hit what I now can only describe as a dark night of the soul. I've talked about it. If you've listened to my episodes this year, I've talked about it a few times. Of course, I didn't realize it at the time. I just felt off. I was deeply emotional. I didn't have clarity like I used to. So I thought it was perhaps just resistance, a season of burnout, or, just sometimes the doubting that creeps in that happens when you're leading and coaching, parenting, and creating. Of course, now that I can look back, I see it very clearly. Overall, my creative spark had dimmed, and my drive to do the creative work, it dried up. I could still show up, and I poured into my clients and my coaches community, and I did it with faithfulness, week in and week out. But I just didn't have what I needed in the tank to keep going with this deeply personal series, the Wholehearted Identity and Wholehearted Journey series. Like I said, I had recorded the first episode, I had outlined the rest of them, and I was truly excited about it. But there was just something in me that I couldn't move forward. And I did not understand that experience. It's not me. If I start something, I've kind of spent my life going, I either have to know it's totally not the right thing to continue, or I go ahead and I finish it. Now, as I look back on my heart and my soul of last year, I have a lot of tenderness and compassion for myself because I just didn't know I needed it, but my soul was asking for a pause, for a little bit more gentleness. I had some deeper healing work to do. And I really needed to tend to that internal world before I finished this meaningful and personal series. But now it is with great relief and even more joy that I get to share this episode and this full series with you. And this time, I promise it will not go unfinished. This episode won't suddenly disappear, and you'll wonder what the rest of the story was because I've written every episode. And today I'm going to record each of them so they'll be done, they'll be real, even before this first one is shared with you. So if this episode resonates with your story and it intrigues you, I just want to say you can trust me to walk you through this whole process beginning to end. I've created these episodes to help you better understand your story and to know where you are in it. I know it's a brave thing to do, and I'm joining you in that bravery by seeing this project through and sharing it with you. Now, the framework we're going to be using for this series is one that's been very powerful in my own life and in my work with my clients. It is actually a critical piece of the wholehearted transformation journey that I use with each and every client. There are 4 characters found in every great story, and maybe you've heard them before. But if you haven't, the 4 characters are the victim, the villain, the hero, and the guide. And by evaluating these characters in a story context, it can often help you understand your own story. So for this episode, we're going to start with a role we all find ourselves in at some point, the victim. Now let's begin together. Welcome to the Simply Wholehearted podcast with Amy Wicks, your wholehearted life and business coach. You should know this podcast will inspire you to grow in self-awareness, be passionate about your faith, and get clear on your calling. If you are new here, then welcome to a community of multi-passionate women who love to go deep on topics like faith, Enneagram, relationships, leadership, and community. This conversation might provide the step you need to make the change you desire. So let's get started. Before I start on the deep frameworks and definitions, I want to share a story, one where I really was a victim. Something happened to me that was completely outside of my control. And maybe you've had a moment like this too, where your world shifts in an instant. This wasn't the worst moment of my life, but it was disorienting. Years ago, I was part of a church internship program. One that on the outside looked spiritual, passionate, alive, very missions focused. But behind the curtain, it was laced with manipulation and spiritual control. I didn't have language for it at the time. I thought I was the problem, that if I could just do better, serve more, pray harder, I would feel whole again. It wasn't until years later, after counseling and mentoring, I realized that I had been groomed to tolerate dysfunction. And in that moment, when I was part of this program, I was truly a victim of an unhealthy system. But I didn't choose it. While I did choose to sign up, I didn't choose to be a victim. But I did get to decide what I was going to do with the pain. And this is a theme that I'll come back to. Now, I want to contrast that victim story with a different kind of experience, one where I wasn't necessarily wronged by anyone, but I started living as if I had no agency. Now, this was during a season when I had 2 babies in 14 months. Yes, 2 beautiful girls. And then soon after, I was raising 3 kids, 3.5 and younger. We were living in a house that wasn't really ours. We were on a tight budget. We didn't have family nearby. And I was without the kind of community that could just step in and lighten the load for me. I remember those long days of nap schedules that never lined up. I was constantly being interrupted, and honestly, I just felt like I was falling short all the time too. I didn't have margin. I didn't have a village, and I definitely didn't have the time or space to pursue any of the dreams I quietly carried in my heart. Of course, to escape, because who doesn't want to escape that? I would flip on HGTV during nap time and dream of different walls, brighter rooms, better spaces, believing that if I just had a different house, a different season, a different life, then maybe I would feel like myself again. I know we use the word stuck a lot these days, but that is exactly how I felt. I felt deeply stuck, and not because someone else had put me there. The real truth was that I had stopped showing up for my own story. I had slipped into believing that this is just how life is now. I started resenting my limitations, resenting the exhaustion, and though I never said it out loud, I even started to resent my role. Now that's the voice of the victim mentality. It sounds like, I don't have a choice. I guess this is just my life now. Everyone gets to flourish. Why not me? And friend, I say this with so much compassion. That mindset, those phrases kept me small. They kept me in a cycle of quiet resentment, blaming everyone and everything for why I was unhappy. It had to be everybody else's fault, except for the one person who could actually do something about it. It was me. I kept quiet when I could have spoken up. I stayed passive when I could have taken brave, imperfect action. And worst of all, I kind of let it steal my joy. All right, let's pause here for a moment. What is the difference between those 2 stories? Because they are both painful and both very real. Yep, honest stories. But one happened to me, and the other, it was happening through the beliefs that I was carrying around with me. They both involved real emotions, but one of them was rooted in a moment I couldn't control, and the other was rooted in a belief that nothing would ever change or that there wasn't any goodness in my circumstances. And that's exactly what I want to explore today. What does it mean to be a victim? And what does it look like when we carry around a victim mentality? And most importantly, how can we break free from both? Now, I want to say clearly here, there's a difference between being a victim of something and having a victim mentality. Being a victim means something happened to you or that was outside of your control, something painful, unjust, or even traumatic. That matters. You don't have to minimize it. But a victim mentality, that is when we let that pain become our identity. When we start to believe that life is just always happening to us, that we're powerless to change, and that our pain defines us. But here's the truth, friend. You are not your trauma. You are not your diagnosis. You are not the worst thing that happened to you. So what do we do with real pain if we're not supposed to get stuck in it or spiritualize it away? The Bible shows us in a very important way. Holy lament. This isn't about pretending or pushing through. It's about bringing your pain to God, raw, honest, unedited, and letting Him meet you there. Psalm 34:18 says, "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit." And friend, that's not just poetic, it's personal. Holy lament says, God, this is hard. I feel forgotten. I'm angry. I don't understand. And then it opens the door for comfort, not pity, for transformation, not just coping and getting through. Okay, now I want to introduce you to a visual framework that I get to use in my coaching and I often use at my retreats. It's one that has not only shaped how I guide others, but it's how I've made sense of my own story. It's called the U diagram, developed by Kathy Lorzell of the Allender Center. And it beautifully captures the movement from pain to healing through the lens of Jesus' life. Now, I want you to picture a big letter U. Or if you're not driving or walking right now and you're a visual person, I want to encourage you to sketch out the U as I describe it. Draw it big and let your story start to take shape there. Okay, so we're looking at the U, and on the left side, we have Friday. Friday is the day of loss, trauma, betrayal, and disorientation. For Jesus, this was crucifixion. It's the day the disciples' world fell apart. Now at the very bottom of the U is Saturday. It's shadowy, silent space where everything feels dark and nothing makes sense. It's a valley of grief, of deep disillusionment. And in so many ways, it's the part we try hardest to avoid. Now let your mind pause at Saturday. And if you're able to write this out and create the visual, maybe name your own Saturday season and write it down. You don't have to solve it, just recognize it. Now, even if you're driving or walking, maybe mention a few things that come to mind. Okay, now we're at the right side of the U, the top of it, and that brings us to Sunday. Resurrection, restoration, redemption. It is the beauty that we long for, the breakthrough we hope for, and the part that we share to others. But here's what I've learned, and maybe you felt this too. In Christian spaces, we often want to leap from Friday to Sunday. We say the right verses, we slap a bow on the pain, we stay busy, we power through darkness, we spiritualize, distract, overfunction, anything to avoid the dark middle. But the truth is, real healing requires Saturday. It's in the bottom of the U, there in that crevice where it's dark and shadowy, where we let the grief be real, and we have a choice to invite others into the ache. And that is how we can actually meet the comfort of Christ in the most intimate way. Now, I'm glossing through this as it really takes a coaching session or at least a 30-minute conversation to go through this process together. But I want to share this personal story. In 2021, I was thrust involuntarily into my own Saturday season. I got a text, and then it was a phone call, and I received truth that shattered so many illusions. I won't go into the full story here, but it involved family, betrayal, and a grief so deep it buckled me to the floor. And at that moment, it wasn't something that I could bypass or fix. I just had to sit in it, cry through it, be held through it. And eventually, I did find the breath in my lungs again and the courage to keep moving. I did stay in that Saturday space of grief for around 20 months, but it was there in that quiet ache that God reminded me that I didn't have to be strong for Him, for the Lord to be near, and I didn't even have to understand what God was doing for Him to fully restore. So if you feel like you're in a Saturday right now, I want to say, even though you might be feeling differently, that you're not doing it wrong, you're not behind, you're healing. And most importantly, you don't have to do it alone. Jesus went all the way to the bottom so we won't have to stay there forever. Sunday is coming, but don't skip the Saturday. It is holy ground too. Okay, you probably know by now that you are wired differently than me, and you're wired differently than your spouse or best friend or child. So, of course, it won't surprise you that I think that each Enneagram type tends to respond to pain in a very particular way. But if we're not careful and not aware, we're going to be stuck in patterns that aren't going to serve us through our pain. So I'm going to share now how each type might experience the victim role. So as I go through these, I just want you to notice what resonates for you. Don't receive any shame, but engage the information with curiosity and perhaps maybe even a dose of compassion. Let's say you're a type 1. You might not even call it pain, you just feel like you messed up or something's wrong with you. You carry the weight of perfection, and so when something isn't going right, you turn it inward. You might try to fix it, make it right, but underneath it all, you're grieving. You just maybe haven't called it that yet or given it that name. If you're a type 2, your story might sound like, I gave so much, I love them well. Why isn't it enough? You may not even realize you're hurting until resentment bubbles up. The pain becomes about your worth, and you start to wonder if you'll ever feel truly loved in return. Type 3s, you're strong, you're capable, you're successful, and you've learned how to push through. But pain? You are really good at staying busy. Because in your mind, if you can keep achieving, maybe you won't have to feel what's underneath. But eventually, friend, that mask is going to crack. And hopefully you will realize that success doesn't always heal wounds. All right, my type 4, you're beautifully in tune with emotion. This is true. But sometimes pain feels, well, safe, familiar, like a place you know too well. You might even find yourself replaying old stories, not because you want to, but because you believe this sadness is who I am. But it's not. It's just part of your story, not your identity. Type 5s, you have a habit of retreating when life gets hard, right? If you're type 5, you like to analyze, you observe, but those emotions, well, they're kind of pesky and they tend to stay locked up tight. It's like pain almost sits in a folder marked to be processed later. But friend, healing needs presence, not just perspective. If you're a type 6, your instinct might be to brace for impact. Like you know pain is coming, so you try to prepare for the next hit, staying alert, scanning for worst case scenarios. Pain ultimately makes you feel unsafe. So anxiety becomes a false sense of control. But living in constant fear of the next blow doesn't protect your heart. It just makes you exhausted. Type 7s, you've got this beautiful gift of reframing everything into something hopeful. But when pain shows up, your reflex is to run, to plan something fun, to move on, to say, everything happens for a reason. Oops, so guilty. But the healing you long for happens when you slow down and feel the weight before trying to lift it. Oh, I'm telling you, I'm saying it like it is today, friend. All right, my type 8 friend, I do love your strength, but pain, well, it feels dangerous to you. It might expose your softness, so you tend to armor up. You fight, protect, take charge. You tend to not let others see you bleed. But what if vulnerability isn't weakness? What if letting someone in is actually your greatest act of courage? And my dear type 9, you may not even recognize your pain at first. You've learned to keep the peace, to say it's fine, even when deep down you know it's not. You might disappear into comfort, distractions, or silence, but your voice matters. Your grief matters. You matter. Oh, dear one, your pain doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. It means you're human. And the good news of the gospel is that Jesus meets you in your unique places of hurt. not to shame you, but to heal you. So, no matter your personality type, I do believe that there's a better story. But it begins with naming your pain and bringing it into the light. Before we wrap up today, I want to offer you a breath prayer based on John 10:10, so you can carry that with you today. So let's take a deep breath in. And then exhale. And pray along with me. I am not defined by my pain or my past. Jesus came so I could have life, abundant, restored, and free. Let's do that one more time. Inhale. I'm not defined by my pain or my past. Exhale. Jesus came so that I could have life, abundant, restored, and free. Even if you're in the bottom of the U, the Lord is leading you to resurrection. And I want to encourage you to write down that truth or even that whisper prayer when those hard moments rise. That is part of practicing holy lament, bringing your pain into God's presence and letting truth speak louder than fear. I've had more than one client say that after doing this type of reflection, specifically the U diagram, she finally stopped apologizing for how long healing was taking and started trusting that God was in every step of it, especially as they continued their process of holy lament. Now, if this content and conversation starts something in you, and you're either recognizing pain for the first time or a pattern that is keeping you stuck, I want you to know you don't have to walk that healing path alone. My Wholehearted Coaching process is designed to help you name your story, bring it into the light, and take the next faithful steps forward. You can book a high-value clarity call through the link in the show notes. I'd love to walk with you. So friend, wherever this episode found you, whether you resonated with feeling stuck, unseen, overwhelmed, or just weary, I want to remind you, you're not alone. And what you're feeling right now doesn't disqualify you from growth. In fact, it might be the very place your healing begins. Maybe today helped you name something you hadn't realized that you were carrying, or maybe it stirred up more questions than answers. Either way, this is the work. This is the journey. And I'd love to keep walking it together. Next week, we're going to talk about what happens when we don't process our pain and instead we start trying to control it. We're diving into the role of the villain. Yes, dun dun dun, the villain within. So, how can we move from self-deception to self-awareness and move from bitterness to breakthrough? Well, you'll have to find out next week. Until then, if you want a little bit more support as you process this first episode, remember to check out the links in the show notes. And friend, I want you to know this. You're not broken beyond repair. You're not disqualified by your pain. You are being formed in it. And here at Simply Wholehearted, this is what we believe to our core. We're all broken. We're all blowing it. But the brave one, she does something about it. Let that be your next step today. Not because you have to fix it, but because you've been invited to heal.